What's up, boy? Alright, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to give you a little rundown of what's going on in terms of this mod and the mod pack that I'm going to give you. Um, Essentially, you're going to download Call of Pripyat because the mod is based on Call of Pripyat. Um, and then you're going to download, I'm going to send you a link, you're going to download a mod called Call of Chernobyl. So essentially, Call of Chernobyl needs Call of Pripyat installed the first time to enable to fully install that mod. Then you'll install Call of Chernobyl, which then becomes standalone. You can, uninstall Call of Pripyat totally fine. Call of Chernobyl you can put on your desktop because you're going to be modding it a little bit. Then I'm going to give you a game data and a bin folder on probably on Google Drive or something that I can upload like a few gigabyte few gigabyte size folder onto. Um, then I'm going to give you a few settings that you're going to do, including like population settings in terms of where my vision of in terms of my mod pack, what I had in mind. I'm going to run you through a few of the mods that I have installed. So I have things like, an arsenal overhaul that I did. So essentially I did a bunch of mods that add new guns, add new gun mechanics and all this other stuff. Realistic weapons damage as well. So instead of, in the past where you could put in 15 rounds into a person and they're not going down, now you're going to essentially put in a few rounds and they will go down even at a distance, which is realistic because in real life you're not going to take a few rounds more than a few rounds and still walk around. Dynamic faction relations, which is probably the most important one. So essentially, dynamic faction relations makes it so that the factions battle amongst themselves, and what one faction member does, completely unrelated to you, will still affect how that faction views you as a member of that faction. Like, essentially, a member of your faction does something, and a different faction will view you differently because a member of your faction did something. Long story short. Then there's weapon trading mods that I did. So I did one. Essentially, I like the sort of gunlord feel of the game. I like the gunplay. I like, because the arsenal mod, there's now a wealth of different weapons and a wealth of ammo. So a lot of times you pick up a gun and you don't even have ammo to use, but it's a really rare gun. And in the past, unless it was close to 100%, um, uh, what is it like? I don't know, not health, but in terms of how much damage the gun's taken, how reliable it is. That would be, if it's anything lower than 100, then essentially you simply do not, you can't trade it in. It's just red. It's essentially like grayed out during the trading interface, in the trading interface. Now you can trade all of the guns that you find, no matter the reliability. It also affects the worth of the gun, of course, which is totally fine. You can sell guns that are 2,000 credits, whereas opposed some are 15, 20, 30,000 credits, depending on how rare they are and the condition of them. Also, going on to the next one, they'll also be valued higher if you've modified them, which is something that you can do normally in the game. It's just that Call of Chernobyl makes it extraordinarily hard for you to modify your guns. Um, Call of Chernobyl makes it so that you have to go through leaps and bounds just to modify your guns. You have to find these kits, the toolkits for the gunsmiths or people who modify the guns. You have to give them kits that allow them to modify guns to the next level. There's 3 levels on the modification tree. So each level requires a more rare type of kit. I have yet to find more than one. I found one once during one playthrough, and now I found Forrester, who's the guy in Red Forest, but it's it's really annoying to get to him. He's the guy who originally had all the toolkits, essentially. He can modify any weapon as high as you can, but it's just a pain in the ass having to get to him with any weapon you want to modify. So what I did is I made it so that every trader all around can now modify weapons. It does cost a lot of money, and they also modify armor too. Those are just the main mods that I made. Then there's a few visual mods. Well, not a few, probably a larger number of visual mods. Things like, Genome scope mod. So Genome made a mod where the scopes are no longer full screen, and I hate full screen scopes. Meaning, when you go down a scope, instead of seeing a scope with the surrounding area visually, visible, you would look down the scope and the surrounding area would be blacked out, which is sort of like, the old-fashioned scope, and I can't stand that. And this game, being as old as it is, Call of Pripyat did come out in 2009. It's an 8-year-old game now, which is a substantial age. Essentially Genome Scopes mod modernizes the game, so now you look down the scope and you can see the surrounding area. You'll notice that I will point that out to you in a moment. I added a bunch of mods, including NM flare mod, so it changes some of the sun flares and whatnot. The SWFX Technicolor mod, which makes it somewhat like a VHS, except you have to tune it a little bit. So a Reshade mod by Crossire, Photorealistic Zone mod, Autumnal Winds, and the Photorealistic Zone mod increase the quality of the textures, so they're also HD textures. So instead of boring the living shit out of you for another moment, let me just get into the game. So one of the drawbacks of that Genome mod is that certain guns in the game have a night vision scope option. This is one of them. And now that you have a scope that actually has visible outside area, now that area is also night vision. This is also one of my favorite guns in the game. It's in the original game, the G36. It was possibly my favorite gun in the original game, and it had an incredible accuracy and very little recoil. And then I have my own night vision. So see the one of the flare mods I have going. I'm one map away from Chernobyl. Oh, hello. Down they go. So yeah, so as you can see, that's it. We're in the clear to talk for a little while. This gun has a lot of mods on it, and it's a cheaper gun that's pretty common in the zone. It's pretty common in the zone. It's essentially like the Street Sweeper in real life, except in the zone. And I've done an extensive amount of mods on it, so whenever you see one of these little arrows, that means it's been modified. So this has, an automatic fire mode, which it didn't have before, and a bunch of other mods. This is that G36. There's a bunch of mods. Arsenal mod added maybe more than like 40 guns. And a lot of different types of ammo, and a lot of pistols. So for example, I don't know if this was one of the original pistols. But it adds a lot of pistols, it adds a lot of types of ammo, which is actually kind of a pain in the ass, but it's very realistic, because in real life there is a lot of type of ammos. One of the Genome scopes working beautifully. This is where the Genome scopes work amazingly. Guns like this, where you have a red dot scope, or a red dot sight, or whatever you call it. I think it's called a scope, in this case. Yeah, this works really well. This also looks very similar to the modded version of the M14 in Fallout. Looks almost identical. I wonder if they're from the same game. Long story short, I feel like I have done this game justice. And now I will run like Naruto. Look, I never noticed stalkers run like Naruto until I made buttons, I made button binds, or I binded the buttons for the third-person view. Your character runs like Naruto, like the nerdy kid in high school. Must get to my next class. But yeah, there's a lot more to it. I'm not gonna bore you anymore. This has already been an extremely long video, but yeah, the zone now looks a hell of a lot better. The zone now acts a lot better. You are now free to join whatever faction you wish, and live out life in that faction. For example, I'm part of Duty, so whenever Freedom interacts with me, Freedom goes buck wild, and we have amazing go into the army warehouses, and you just have this crazy war between Duty and Freedom, and it's amazing because you just get mowed down. But you can also pick up a ton of weapons if you don't get mowed down. Sneak back to your weapons trader and sell them all for a crazy profit, and then start upgrading your gear, and then start heading out further. Go further into the zone, interact with other people, get missions from them to do dangerous things that get you more money, yada yada yada. It's really fun. Honestly, I feel like it's more of a good representation of the zone than the games are. The games are very story driven. The zone isn't. In real life, the zone, like, the games are story driven and you're following a storyline. But in reality, if the Call of Chernobyl mod does one thing perfectly, it recreates the zone as an empty, depressing, hollow place that you're just desperate to make money in and survive in. And essentially, you just have to find like a place for yourself in the zone, which is something that this mod does perfectly. It's empty, and unless you find a place for yourself there, it's gonna be boring, which is why I never really got into it until I started modding it. But anyways, Milo, and have a good day. Mwah. Mwah.